maintaining the waiting room, and we will get started. Hello and welcome to everyone watching us on the Mentor Teacher Training Institute YouTube site. It's nice for you all to take the time to join us here in week 3 of our Mentor Teacher Training Institute official certified training. I am going to share my screen for all of you. And Zainab, can you give me a thumbs up if you see my screen full screen right now? Great, thank you. So as I said, we are in week 3 of a 4-week certified course. If this happens to be your first session that you've joined us in, if you can go back to sessions 1 and 2 on the YouTube channel, on the Mentora Teacher Institute YouTube channel, you can find the recorded sessions there and you can watch those anytime you want. As always, as you see down here at the bottom, all of the resources and weekly discussions may be accessed on the FLD Life Skills blogs. You can go there and find those. Those are maintained by our Life Skills work group. Sometimes they depend on me and I can be a bit slow with the busy schedule to get the resources to them. So sorry for the delay last week. This week, I'll have those to you all by early morning so we can have those up during the day tomorrow. So as I said, the most fun session, I hope you'll feel the same at the end of the session, speaking and writing activities. And then next week, the all important assessment session on summative and formative assessment. Integrating higher order thinking is what I said, but typically I'm looking at then life skills across the board, and we'll see what I'm talking about next week. Defining life skills, just as a quick reminder. Now, this is what I showed you in the first session, these 4 categories. These are how we organize life skills in our own Bachchere College Life Skills Initiative. This is informed by the Partnership for 21st Century Learning framework that is also shared on the Life Skills blogs. Now, I told you the 4 C's, this area right here, learning and innovation skills. Now, most of these are incorporated quite implicitly in almost all of the activities I show you. And indeed, in many of the activities that are already on your lesson plans. Now, we have some other areas too, where we have some explicit activities, especially media literacy here. And then in this first category here, we will be adding more and more focus on these specific literacy areas on our blogs in the coming weeks as well. So make sure you take the opportunity to go and look at the resources tab, familiarize yourself with what we are calling life skills and some of the reference academic documentation that can be used to understand these a little bit better. For tonight, we are talking about, as I said, speaking and writing. I'm going to start out and make sure all of you, especially those of you who are not in one of our bilingual schools, know what the Oracy framework is, because it's a great framework for conducting, planning, and assessing speaking skills in your lessons. It's something that we reference as the main office here in the Foreign Languages Department, and I will be sharing some resources with you on the blog for this week as well. We will then get into, I guess, what could also be considered icebreakers again. However, these are specifically aimed at getting students talking, some fun activities you can do that also make them use their brains a little bit as well. Presentations and debates will be our central speaking activity focus tonight. We will look at process writing and define what process writing means as opposed to product-based writing. And then also interactive writing activities is what I will leave you with. And in my view, those are some of the most fun activities that you'll see tonight. To get us started, I want to have a little chat room activity here. How do you get your students speaking in the classroom? What are some of your favorite activities? Now, from my perspective, I think getting your students speaking is not always the biggest challenge. Sometimes it's controlling their energy and their speech and getting them to focus on the activities that we want them to be speaking about is sometimes the biggest challenge. However, in terms of your classrooms right now, of the speaking activities on your plans and what you're doing with your students, how do you find that you get them engaged in speaking? And what are specifically some of your favorite activity types? And I wonder if I could get some help. By the way, tonight, Vahappe, Eje, Hanum are not with us. We have Dilek Hoja and Eda Hoja from high school joining our K-8 teachers here tonight, just so you can see their faces and meet them. Dilek Hoja is our national department head for high school levels. Eda is our academic coordinator that you'll be hearing from them shortly. Zainab, I wonder if you could give me some sample responses from the chat box.
Sure, I can. We have picture prompt, story chain, what happens next activity, picture description, and we have debates. That's all for now.
Okay, now I just want to stop you, Zainab, because you're stealing all of my thunder for the whole session here. You're mentioning all the activities I'm about to talk about, but that's good to know that some of you certainly have already incorporated these. Of course, in our lesson plans, we have a lot of these activities incorporated. I'm going to be specifically highlighting the life skills aspects, specifically the higher order thinking skills related aspects of speaking activities and how we can really emphasize and highlight those in the lessons tonight. So I'm sure we have a good list, actually, Zainab. If we can save the chat log, it would be nice to see in more detail some of these other responses we've had. But in the interest of time, let me move ahead and show you this. I just told you about this, the Oracy Skills Framework. This is a really nice resource. Again, we'll be sharing this on the blog, but it gives you that very wide view of what students are doing when they're speaking and what we're trying to measure in different categories here. Their physical, linguistic, cognitive, and social and emotional performance. You'll see a lot of the terminology here is kind of cross-referenced from the list of life skills I showed you on a previous slide. The Oracy framework, as I also mentioned in a previous week, includes active listening, as you see here. It's really a great document to use when you're really trying to understand all of the different aspects and elements that go into the activity of speaking. Now, our bilingual school teachers, of course, know this well. The Cambridge Voices series we have is an Oracy-based series, whereas we also try to work in Oracy skills throughout our program in the other levels as well. But just to bring it to your attention and say that you can learn a lot more with the resources we'll post in the blog tomorrow. Now, life skills while speaking, let's get started. And as I said, it all starts with getting your students talking. And before I came to Turkey, many years ago now, I started out teaching in South Korea. And that was my first experience as a teacher with age 3, if you can imagine that. That was a hard experience. But I realized throughout the levels I was teaching that culturally it was quite difficult to get Korean students speaking. I would have to be quite creative. Then I came to Turkey, and I'll never forget my first lesson. I was with 8th graders and I couldn't get a word in. You talk about teacher talk time. It was all student talk, not about the lesson, but they killed me with questions, everything. They wanted to know every aspect. And I realized, okay, so speaking is quite easy in Turkey, but it's how you target that speaking and how you keep it focused on a process or also a task at hand. So let's talk about some of the things we're doing when we're speaking with our students. Now, first thing I want to tell you, and this is often kind of misunderstood, I think, in some of our schools where we say, never use Turkish in the classes, and this has to be a strong rule. I know this is repeated by a lot of the local department heads, and I don't want to put out any mixed signals. Of course, we don't want to go to the lesson and speak Turkish directly with our students in the class. But I just want to point out this term right here, translanguaging. So when teaching speaking, and by the way, I saw one of you use this in the chat box, I think last week, one of you mentioned translanguaging, and I said I was going to mention it. And essentially, it's when learners, as you see here, mix and match their first language with the target language. And if you scroll down just a little bit here, it helps manage the problems that occur when the content of an activity is too linguistically challenging. The reason I'm saying this is for some of the activities tonight, indeed, in a lot of the activities that we're going to do in the life skills lessons, the same rules that apply in the English classroom are not always found here because our goal, first and foremost, is to get students thinking and, of course, practicing those life skills areas. If you're finding that linguistically, their second language, English, is a challenge to being able to accomplish those activities, this is a strategy that can be used where there might actually be a few Turkish words in the lessons if you're finding that it's helping learners better understand and analyze the links between ideas. I'll try to point out tonight when talking about specific activity types, how translanguaging can be useful to make sure you can still conduct the activity in the first place. A lot of times teachers will depend on lower order thinking skills based activities just because of those linguistic limitations. And it's difficult when you're at A1 and A2 levels. So again, this is a good strategy. If you go to the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework that we've posted on the blogs, and you go to the critical thinking framework specifically, you can look through that document and find a nice definition of translanguaging and a bit more information as well. Now let's start getting your students talking, things you can do with them. As always, I'll be posting these activities as resources on the blogs. However, these are just some of the things that you can do to add to your teacher toolkits of things you're probably already doing. Most of these are not big surprises to you. I've got a nice talking bingo game here that I'll be sharing as a full resource with you, which students typically love, even at the youngest ages. But some of these other activities as well are quite engaging for students to get them talking, including, as everyone knows, taboo, but including some others that really are fostering critical thinking and higher order thinking skills. Now, I'm about to show you these on the next slide. So let me go ahead and move up here. And I am going to now, for the first time, get help from our high school administrators for this activity. Rank and explain. I love this activity. It makes our students think in different ways. And Dilek Koja, I'm going to make you think in different ways now. I wonder, looking at this list of jobs, of occupations, if you can rank them in order of their status in society. Which one of these is considered the highest status occupation?
Judge.
You would say judge.
Yeah.
More than
judge.
Well, actually, I thought doctor was on the list. It's not actually. So judge actually could be a correct response there.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. What would you say, Eda Hoja? Which of these would you say oppositely would be the lowest status in society?
Cleaner, unfortunately.
Cleaner.
Probably.
Okay.
No, it's
Cleaner.
teacher, Mr. Benson.
Not teacher. Teacher's at the bottom of the list, but it's not the lowest status. Actually, I'm
Unfortunately.
surprised, in Turkey, teacher is a higher status, I think, than it is in America, where I come from. In Turkey, I remember the first time I heard someone call me hojam, and I said, what does that mean? And they said, my master. And I thought, wow, that's quite a respectful title to give your teachers. But I would say in general that Turkish people do show more respect to teachers than in some other places around the world. However, the point of this activity is to give students different categories, like which of these jobs appeal to you most? Which of these jobs would you want to do and why? Which of these jobs would pay the most or the least? Which of these jobs would be the most stressful and why? And how would you rank them then? So looking at these rankings and how they change based on the criteria is a really good way to get students then to compare and see that it depends on what perspective you're looking at from. So let me ask you then, Zainab, which of these would you say has the highest stress level?
I know the answer. Teacher.
Okay, I was guessing that was a test to see what you would say, but I would say perhaps teacher. I couldn't say for the others, as I've never been most of these, but of course can have the highest stress level, but somehow in the second category also appeal to us the most. It's strange how that happens, right? But at any rate, this is a nice activity to get your students going, to get them participating in the lesson, especially kind of as an icebreaker. Riddle me this. Okay, now I want to use the chat box now and see what kind of responses we're going to get, if we can get some correct responses, although we can accept other responses that still answer the question. The first one is, what goes up but never comes down? Any ideas there?
We
I
have
see my
gas.
helpers look totally stumped by this one, so maybe I shouldn't put you on the spot, but I think the second one is quite easy. Let's see, what gets wet while drying? Can any of you answer that one?
Sorry, Mr. Benton. For the first one, we have answers.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah,
Age. Is it age?
we'll see. The next slide has all the answers, so let me not say.
Okay, for the second one, we have also answers. Is it towel?
That's a clever teacher. They obviously have either seen this riddle before or they're very quick thinking on their feet here.
Okay.
What has to be broken before you can? I'm going to keep asking until Dilek or Eda Hoja can answer one of these. And they're thinking, we're
What has to be
exhausted.
broken
It's a
before
long
you
day. I
can-
can't answer riddles.
What has to be broken before you could broken?
Now, all the participants can see, clearly I do not show the guests the answers before we do the activities. So, okay, you're going to say, but young students could never answer these anyway. So why would we ask them? Well, to be honest, I don't even ask the students. I show them the answer in the beginning and I get them to explain to me why that's the case. Because of course, perhaps some high school students might get these, but they're quite challenging as we see here. So why don't we explain it then? Edda, for example, what has to be broken before you can use it? The answer is an egg. And why is that the case?
Because we need to break an egg before we can, prepare breakfast.
Eat it, yeah.
Yes, before we can eat it.
You have to break the shell before you can cook it, essentially. Okay, that's true. So getting students to explain the answers and then potentially think of any other answers that might also be applicable. Now, for any of you that do like riddles, I've got a nice list of, I think, 100, 150 of them that you can go through and try on your students. Another thing you can do is put them in pairs and just give them each a riddle and get them to think through it, or give them one with an answer, one without. So you can do variations on the activity. But again, it's good to get that higher order thinking started. And as we see at the end of a long work day, higher order thinking is quite difficult. So these work especially well early in the week, early in the morning. All right, PowerPoint parties. This is something, honestly, I first learned about when the pandemic started, because all schools around the world were going to online lessons and looking for ways to still engage the students and make them want to participate. Now, PowerPoint parties were being done outside of schools, just groups of friends, because they couldn't visit each other under quarantine. They were making PowerPoint presentations based on topics that interest them, and then doing the presentations together on Zoom, having little Zoom parties and giving presentations. So you can still do this. Obviously, you can do it in the class. We're going to talk a lot more about presentations shortly, but I like PowerPoint parties in that students have control over what they're presenting on, giving your students an opportunity in these life skills lessons to present on or to share topics of interest or of passion to them, and not always exactly what's in the curriculum. That's one of the benefits of life skills lessons, since you are not held specifically to any lesson plan in these lessons. So use them to let your students choose sometimes as well. Just a minute speeches, another good way to get students talking, because you are forcing them, you're giving them a topic, giving them a minute, and getting them to share what they can in an impromptu way. You might be asking, well, they obviously need planning. What possibly could they talk about? One activity I love to do is convince me if you can. Now, this is generally, you can do this many ways, but it's something that you can get students to do in a short activity, and all students then would have a chance to speak. You can get them in groups or pairs and get them to plan it first if you'd like, but you're getting them to think of an original idea for an invention or a product. You're then giving them 2 minutes to convince me to use it. Make sure you make your presentation persuasive. Now, in the high school groups training, I'm going to go in detail of what Monroe's motivated sequence is. It's something that advertisers use to convince all of us to buy their products, but I'm just putting it up here now just to give you an idea of what it is briefly. I'm going to show you, though, what you can do with this to make it a lot of fun for the students as well outside of the class. So let me go to the next. Now, I am so sorry, but I have to go out of my screen share and back in because I once again did not share my sound. So now I did. Now, this is something I used to do with my middle school students that is a great activity then. If you're taking the just a minute speech or the convince me if you can idea and getting your students to actually create their own commercial or advertisement. This is an example of something you could do to inspire them. This is actually a product in America, the Snuggie. I'm not sure if any of you have heard it before. I'm going to show it to you. It's only 1 minute and it demonstrates the Monroe's motivated sequence and persuasive language. Obviously, with our students, we're going to be at a more basic level, but this is just to illustrate it to you teachers. Here we go.
You want to keep warm when you're feeling chilled, but you don't want to raise your heating bill. Blankets are okay, but they can slip and slide. And when you need to reach for something, your hands are trapped inside. Now, there's the Snuggie, the blanket that has sleeves. The Snuggie keeps you totally warm and gives you the freedom to use your hands. So now, you can work the remote or read a book in total warmth and comfort. Use your laptop without being cold, or enjoy a snack while staying snugly warm. Snuggie is made of ultra-soft, thick, luxurious fleece with oversized sleeves so you can move your arms and use your hands and still be wrapped in warmth. Super large, one size fits all, so you can stay warm from head to toe. No more cold feet. And with Snuggie, you can get up and still stay warm. Perfect for men, women, and children too. The ultra-soft fleece keeps you totally warm, and the sleeves keep your hands free. So you can snuggle your baby in your arms or keep your pet close at hand. Perfect for chilly outdoor evenings, staying cozy and warm at sporting events. And it's ideal for those drafty dorm rooms. The Snuggie is machine washable, so you'll get years of warmth and comfort. Now you can do what you need to and stay totally warm with the Snuggie.
All right. So I'm guessing as the weather's getting colder in Turkey these days, we have a lot of people who want a Snuggie now. But the point is, of course, getting your students to try making their own fictional products and developing commercials or even short speeches when they're trying to use persuasive language to explain people why they should want to have it. And that's a great way to get them using their critical thinking and their higher order thinking skills. Now, if I go to the next, how-to and review videos. Now, this is quite nice because students are interacting with these more and more in their real lives, even at younger ages now. If you go to a lot of different social media platforms, really the way that we interact as consumers now is always going to look at reviews and always going to see people's comments on products or services before we buy them. Also, instructive how-to videos are a great way to get your students engaged in speaking in a lesson. Some others that I'm not going to go through all of because there's just really so many, but you'll have a lot more resources in the Life Skills blog if you want to go through these. Now, some of these, anyway, some of you in the chat box mentioned, so you're clearly aware of them. For those that you're not as aware of, then look for the posts that you see tomorrow and explore in a little bit more depth. I've got a really good couple of websites for you for story starters and speaking prompts. Popcorn stories, if you don't know what that is, I'll have 3 versions of that in a resource for you. Sometimes, though, to get quite basic, it's nice doing interviews or hot seat activities with your students as well. Again, getting them speaking so that they're engaged in the lesson so that then we can build on those to dive more deeply into life skills. Another thing that I like to do in speaking lessons is monologues and charades. Now, I know one of the big hits in our program has been the Polka Dot Plays books in our in our bilingual primary schools. We also have a drama component built into our extension pack in our standard levels in primary. Really, I think that the more we can do with drama, the better for our students. I'm a believer, although I'm not specifically trained in drama myself, I do recognize its value. And that's why I put it here. I've got several sites for you that use monologues. And these are written by real students around the world. These are actually native speaker students at the age of our students in I would guess anywhere from 3rd grade up through about 7. So you can get your students to go. And I like having students memorize and perform monologues, trying to convey the message in the style that the student who originally wrote it in that style that they prepared it with. So take a look at those. This is just a short example for you. So they're relatively short. You can have a couple of students volunteer and do monologues in life skills lesson where you then go back and have the other students review what they've done and give feedback, of course. Also, charades is in itself a great higher order thinking skills activity as you get students to try to guess what actions the students are performing non-verbally in the class as well. To keep going, I've got a couple of these to share with you, mystery scenarios. Now this basically an activity where you're going to give your students clues to try to solve a crime. And of course, for the younger learners, we're not going to have any murders or any violent crimes. We're going to have things like bank robberies and things that will get them interested in the activity while still being age appropriate. Now, so mystery scenarios then give your students an opportunity to solve a mystery, obviously, as is written here. And again, there's a couple of really nice scenarios that you could even do across multiple life skills lessons, but I'll be sharing the resource with you as well. And logic puzzles. This definitely, as we spoke about in the first week, deductive and inductive logic, this is an excellent opportunity for you to practice with your students. Honestly, there are tables where students can figure these puzzles out mathematically even. However, when I do them, I don't like giving the table. I like putting them in groups and getting them to sit together, read over the clues, and try to figure out the answer to the question, which each puzzle has. This one it is, can you determine which friend brought which present and in what color paper it was wrapped? And they get clues, they get these objects or the people involved, then they actually get the clues explained. You can then go in with your students and either assist them in solving the logic puzzles or give each different group a separate puzzle and then get them to explain to the rest of the class. On the logic puzzle sites I'll be sharing, some of you, if you might like to do these by yourselves and already be familiar, but I'll be sharing site with literally hundreds of these logic puzzles that are scaled in difficulty. So you can start with easy puzzles for the smaller ones and move up through medium and hard and very hard if you would like. And getting to the central activity for spoken production then in our classes with our students, obviously presentations. So I want to ask you a question. What makes a great presentation? Who is the best presenter you know and the best presentation you've ever seen? However, just like in the first session, I gave you a condition on the question. I said no religious answers. This one, you cannot say Steve Jobs. Please do not say.
Can we say Mr. Benton?
You can say, of course, Dilek.
Okay.
Oh, no. Can you say Mr. Benton? No, you can't say Steve Jobs or Mr. Benton.
Oh, okay.
It has to be someone who's actually a great presenter, please. Are we getting comments in the chat box, Zainab?
Actually, we have Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins, a good example. Yeah.
And former President Barack Obama.
That's who I would write, yes.
Yes. For now, Dylan William. We have.
Dylan William, huh. We'll have to jot that one down and see who he is. I know Tony Robbins, obviously Barack Obama. I wonder if any of you could fill me in on a really great Turkish presenter, someone that I could maybe see, a good speaker or presenter here in Turkey.
Sunay Akın, he's my favorite.
Who is it, Dilek?
Sunay Akın.
Sunay Akın. Okay. What kind of work does he do? What kind of presentations does he give?
Oh, actually, from life skills. He's giving presentations about our daily lives, experiences, history. I feel very peaceful and relaxed when I listen to him.
That's very nice.
It doesn't make me bored. I don't know if anyone agrees with me or not.
I see. Okay, very nice. So the best presenter, the great presenter, and Dilek, her criteria was makes me relaxed. And generally, I guess everyone has their own criteria. Now, when we're looking at this from a life skills perspective, we want to be teaching our students, even at a young age, even if we're not using the actual words. Oh, by the way, before that, I forgot, I put this in at the last minute because if you want to teach your students presentation skills, who better to guide them than students of their own age, their peers? So I did want to just point out this recommendation as a YouTube channel. These videos are great. They're really short. It's actually a school in America that does these videos, and there's a bunch of them on a variety of topics, but specifically for presentation skills, you can find these. Highly recommended, and they're so sweet. I'll just show you just a few seconds of this one.
Kids. Presentation skills, part 1.
My name is Kenna, and I'm going to teach you how to do a great presentation.
It's my version of a TED Talk.
Number 1, entrance. When you walk in, you have to be confident.
Smile. If you don't smile, the audience is gonna be like, what?
You have to walk in confidently.
You should have your shoulders back, but not like all the way back.
Don't move around so much, because that's a little bit distracting.
Because then the audience is gonna lose attention.
If you're having a little bit of trouble putting your hands by your side, you can put your hands above your belly button.
This is a very good speaker.
Okay, so actually really good tips, but at the same time, really cute as well. So a good tip for you all, if you'd like to show your students videos that they might be more engaged with seeing, is how their peers are explaining it to them. However, what I was talking about just a minute ago is rhetorical strategies and giving students an idea of the strategic use of speech. Now, we've already done this a bit in this presentation when we talked about persuasive speech and convince me if you can. But in general, I'm talking about 3 different categories here: ethos, pathos, logos. Now, if any of you followed up on the TED Talk worksheet that I shared last week, you'll see actually these 3 elements were integrated into that worksheet in terms of asking students to notice how speakers use them. But of course, we, especially with a primary student, aren't necessarily going to use the words ethos, pathos, logos. We are going to, though, in our own way, teach them how each of these elements are important to making a speech more convincing. Using facts, being an authority, the early building blocks of information literacy, getting your students, when they are experts on the topic, to actually have a source and have a background and a evidence for why they're showing what they're showing in order to establish that expertise on the topic. We're also looking at pathos, show how you feel, make a connection with the audience, very important. And of course, logos, have a strong argument and make sense, be logically sound with your explanations. And I want to show you all a video right now. And again, not anything in this specific example you'd be showing to your students, although I will be sharing a link with short presentation videos you can use with your students this week. But just for you, the adults, I want you all to listen to this TED Talk. It's, again, 2 or 3 minutes. And then I'm going to ask Poor Dilek Zeynep Edahoja to take on ethos, pathos, and logos, and explain how each of those were used in this short presentation to be a convincing presenter. So let's watch it.
Imagine, if you will, a gift. I'd like for you to picture it in your mind. It's not too big, about the size of a golf ball. So envision what it looks like all wrapped up. But before I show you what's inside, I will tell you it's going to do incredible things for you. It will bring all of your family together. You will feel loved and appreciated like never before, and reconnect with friends and acquaintances you haven't heard from in years. Adoration and admiration will overwhelm you. It will recalibrate what's most important in your life. It will redefine your sense of spirituality and faith. You'll have a new understanding and trust in your body. You'll have unsurpassed vitality and energy. You'll expand your vocabulary, meet new people, and you'll have a healthier lifestyle. And get this, you'll have an 8-week vacation of doing absolutely nothing. You'll eat countless gourmet meals. Flowers will arrive by the truckload. People will say to you, "You look great. Have you had any work done?" And you'll have a lifetime supply of good drugs. You'll be challenged, inspired, motivated, and humbled. Your life will have new meaning. Peace, health, serenity, happiness. Nirvana. The price, $55,000. And that's an incredible deal. By now, I know you're dying to know what it is and where you can get one. Does Amazon carry it? Does it have the Apple logo on it? Is there a waiting list? Not likely. This gift came to me about 5 months ago and looked more like this when it was all wrapped up. Not quite so pretty. And this. And then this. It was a rare gem, a brain tumor, hemangioblastoma, the gift that keeps on giving. And while I'm okay now, I wouldn't wish this gift for you. I'm not sure you'd want it. but I wouldn't change my experience. It profoundly altered my life in ways I didn't expect, in all the ways I just shared with you. So the next time you're faced with something that's unexpected, unwanted, and uncertain, consider that it just may be a gift. Namaste.
All right. So I'm going to start with you, Dilek Koja. Did you think it was a good presentation? Short, but did you find it to be effective?
It was very effective, Spencer. I didn't guess the ending, so I felt very emotional in the end.
Okay, so you've just pointed out two aspects. Pathos, obviously, she established an emotional connection with the audience there.
Mhm.
Logos, she
Definitely.
used an interesting presentation tactic by tricking us, kind of telling us that it was a
Mhm.
gift. We're expecting something positive, maybe for her to open up a new type of technology or some kind of a fancy car or something. But obviously, she used some kind of reverse psychology on us. And it was a brain tumor that was the best gift I ever survived. Now you can understand the title. So the point is there that, and obviously the first, ethos, she establishes her expertise, obviously by discussing her lived experience. So those are three areas. Now, when you're questioning students on a video, you're, again, not using the words ethos, pathos, logos, but saying, did you connect with the author? Did you feel that, how did the speaker feel? Were they happy? Were they sad? When you're asking them, were you convinced? Did you understand them? What are some of the things that they said specifically that you found to be interesting or that you found to be not interesting, convincing or not convincing? So just questioning strategies then. But when you're doing this as the teacher, obviously you're keeping in mind those rhetorical strategies clearly and helping students understand what it is that makes some presentations more effective than others. Now, I'm going to go to the next category, moving from spoken production, where we're kind of student-centered, but we're one student-centered as they give a presentation in front of the class, moving to a debate where we are interactive now. And debate, for so many reasons, really is one of the most effective educational activities that I think you can find anywhere. There are many ways to do debates, of course. It's difficult, of course, with the smallest ones, but once we're in middle school, students are quite adept at debating. And by the time they're in middle school, they're also participating in activities such as JMUN and other debate clubs where they can really develop a sophisticated level of debate skill. Now, research shows that debating, and just so you know, I'm not making this up, I will have an article link for you in the resources, but it does improve critical thinking skills, enhances self-confidence, strengthens public speaking skills, improves listening skills as we go back to our oracy framework, and we see a lot of this reflected there, and helping us organize our thoughts. So in so many ways, debate is so good for students, and starting it at the earliest age is a great idea as well. How can we do debate? Well, there's tons of ways. And I could spend the rest of the session explaining what each of these are. I'll give you a list of debate types. Have a look, see what you can do with your students to either do full class debates, which is sometimes easier with the younger ones, but then get into either small group or actually things like debate tournaments, which I think are a lot of fun once you get into middle school. Now, we're going to do what I call a pop debate right now. I've got to wake Dilek Hoja and Eda Hoja up a little. We've got to get them debating. So I obviously organized this beforehand. We're going to do a pop debate. Sometimes outside of a life skills lesson, I like to just throw these at students. If I need a moment to get them engaged in the lesson again, I will throw one of a list of dozens of debate topics in front of them, and I will get one student to be a supporter, one student to be an opposer, and another student to be a judge. These can also be groups of students, obviously. But the point is, in a very short minimal preparation debate, you get students to practice these skills. So right now we're going to have Eda as the supporter of a resolution. Now the resolution is just a point, it's a statement, it's actually an opinion. And Eda, I am forcing you to accept and argue for this opinion. Dilek Hoja, I am forcing you to speak against the opinion. Now you'll have a moment when you see the next slide to consider this and to briefly plan what you're going to say. Dilek, there's not much you can plan because Eda will make the first statement and then you will rebut A rebuttal is your response against what she is saying, telling what you disagree with specifically and why, and then giving your own perspective on this issue. Finally, the judge, actually, I guess, Zainab, you should be the judge for me to stay out and impartial, but I'll be the judge for now. And I will say, and who I would feel, not who wins the debate, but who had the stronger argument. That's what we're looking at, of course. Now, here's the debate topic, ready or not. Schools should block sites like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram on their computers. By the way, to all of our people out on Zoom and able to participate in the chat box, please put your answer as well, but make this your honest response. I'm just curious what you might think about this. By the way, as you see with the topic, I've also worked in a very nice media literacy, information literacy related topic to force my students here, Dilek and Eda, to debate on. So schools should block sites like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram on their computers. We're going to take a few seconds of silence while Eda Hoja gathers her thoughts. And then Eda Hoja, whenever you're ready, please explain your perspective on this point.
I think I can start. Okay, I think schools should block sites like YouTube, Facebook, and all that kind of social media because it will be just a distraction for students. And I think students should definitely focus on their assignments. And also, it's not always easy to check those sites, so we don't know whether it's reliable, like the content that we have on YouTube and social media. So it's true that there might be some useful content, of course, but there are definitely better sites with teaching content also. So that's why I think it should be definitely banned at schools and school computers.
Very nice, Eda. And that was almost a model timing for your response too. That's about the detail we would want. Mm-hmm. You gave good reasons, but you also didn't go on too long. Dilek, Hoja, I'm going to give you a few seconds just to think over that. And then whenever you're ready, start your rebuttal against what Eda Hoja has just said.
Okay. People who know me know that I'm very into social media. So of course I am the opposer here. So our biggest problem is to block students or block teenagers. I mean, not to use these social media, but I mean, we shouldn't block them. Actually, I think we should teach them how to use these sites effectively. So I'm really against this idea, because schools shouldn't block sites like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. It's a kind of marketing for all schools. I mean, using these social media, sharing the things the students have done so far, like activities, projects. So, but the schools, of course, should ban some like dangerous sites. There are some programs, there are some technical issues that people or parents or teachers or schools can ban the sites that are not useful for the students. So students should use social media for their benefit, of course. But as I mentioned before, the first thing that teachers should do is to teach how to use them effectively. So if we trust these teenagers, if we trust these students, I'm sure that they're going to use the social media on their benefit. Thank you.
Very nice, Tilakoja. Thank you so much. Actually, there's just not enough detail for me really to give, because I think you're about even with your responses. I think I could see both sides. I'm going to go with my own personal thought then. I think I would really agree with Tilakoja. We've got to teach them how to, and that's what life skills are all about, right? We should be teaching these students how to use these in responsible and safe ways. And where are they going to learn that if not at school, considering a lot of their parents also are not speaking English, which is the language that they're often interacting in on these sites. That's my personal thought. I wonder in the chat box, Zainab, do we have people on both sides of the issue? I'm just curious it's over nearly 250 of our teachers here, what some of the responses look like.
Okay, let me read one of the comments, which I really agree with her, Sarpiloja. I wish we could develop an understanding how to use them effectively and properly at school instead of blocking them right away. There should be an awareness about the use of media literacy, which is Correct. And there is another one. Blocking makes students even more curious. Yes. I'm not sure if blocking these platforms would make a better atmosphere. Yeah, they're mostly against.
Mostly against blocking them. Okay.
Mr. Benson, I agree with them. Actually, I agree with the liquid also. I mean,
I wanted to make sure to point that out.
To be honest, yes.
I see. Well, you're just doing your job and arguing the for position. Thank you. With your students, again, you're going to scale down the complexity of the debate topic, but you can do that and also take into account technologies and topics included in our life skills list. Just basic topics like, should there be limits on screen time at home? I think getting students, and especially at the youngest ages, their perspectives and their opinions on this is a nice activity to do in the class, to get them to see that there are competing viewpoints on such topics like that they experience at home in their families, but obviously their friends do as well. Sometimes getting them to see the logic of both sides is quite a useful activity and quite a useful outcome of a debate. All right, so let's move on here and let's get to writing. And I would say that writing's my favorite skill. That's a strange way to phrase it, I suppose, but I love teaching writing. I love writing, and I think it's so important, and I think it's so neglected, especially if you look at writing from a process-based approach. Next year, as we work on updating our curriculum across levels, we are certainly putting a very big focus on process writing and drafting in different stages, pre-planning, all of those different aspects of process writing, which we're about to talk about now. But before we get to process, there are ways to get students engaged in writing, just as with speaking, that allow them to have time just to get that pen and put it on paper, or get the thumbs on their tablet or their hands on their keyboards, getting them to write. For example, reflection prompts. And again, some of these are quite accessible even to younger students. Can we replace teachers with computers? Now, I'm not going to ask you all to reflect on these, but I would say just giving your students some reflection prompts and doing a 5-minute free writing is an excellent way to open a lesson. Creative prompts here I put as well. I like these a lot, and you can get these also with the story starters that I'm going to post from the speaking section. They can be used either way for speaking or for writing. But these are quite fun that you can get students then to do some creative writing tasks, which unfortunately we don't have enough of across the curriculum, across grade levels. Mad Libs. Now, I'm not sure how many people, I wonder if we could just get a quick reaction in the chat box. If you can just write me a yes if you've heard of Mad Libs. I wonder, is this a strange American thing that people around the world have not heard of? And if you can put no if you have not heard of what Mad Libs are. What kind of reaction are we getting there, Zainab?
For now, 5 yeses, 2 nos.
Okay,
Yeah.
So more yes than no. Mad Libs are fun activities for those of you who said yes. I'm sure you already know. Now, if you go out here just briefly, for those of you who are curious, I'm going to share a link, but I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of the concept of what this is very briefly. So let me share my screen. So if you go to the Mad Libs website here, you can find demonstrations of what they are. But if you go here in the top left corner, you will see printables, which give you worksheets that you can work with from the official Mad Libs website. So when you go in, you will see what you do is you'll ask students parts of speech before the activity. Students will give you, a list of adjectives, nouns, plural nouns, verb ending in ing, and then you're plugging those into a story. Obviously, the students are giving it to you without any context. And so once you plug it back into the story, then they become quite funny. Now, this is not a writing activity per se, but it is getting students to have input into an extended text that they then read back, and they turn out most of the time to be quite funny and engaging. And then you're asking students as the next step, why is this so funny? Why doesn't this fit here? What would fit better here, of course? And again, it's a nice priming activity for students to do in a reading or a writing lesson, actually. So let me just head back. Again, that link will obviously be shared. Chain story writing. I love doing this as a writing activity in class. You get students either in groups or the whole class, and you just get them to add a sentence to a prompt sentence that you're giving. Each student adds a sentence. You can do this speaking as well again, but by the end of the class, you have a story that has been written together, and you will get some really funny results that then the students can share out loud with their class, of course. Photo description fairy tale. Now, we talked about photo description in a previous lesson. I like, again, creative writing tasks, trying to focus on those whenever we can, and certainly giving students some kind of a photo as a prompt and getting them then to explain their very own fairy tale is a fun and engaging activity, especially with the younger ages. But in the end, after we've primed them, after we've prepared them, we want them to be looking at writing as a process, again, from the earliest stages, and understanding that we are moving through a cycle here of pre-writing, planning and outlining, writing a draft, redrafting and revising, editing and proofreading, as you see here. I'm putting a link here to this very nice concise explanation of the writing process that's not overly academic, that you can follow up on and get an idea of what process writing is. But as a general rule, just to give you kind of a comparison between process and product writing, you are looking at more than one draft, obviously a key element, 2 or 3 drafts. You're looking at a writing that is therefore collaborative, where there's a peer feedback stage put in, along with feedback from the teacher that inform the drafting phases. Next week, when we talk about formative assessment, we'll talk more about that. I'll be showing you a really good rubric that you can use for both peer and teacher feedback in your process writing lessons. And then, of course, the last phrase here is the most important. The emphasis is on the creative process, rather than being on just that end product. We want students then not just to copy a model that we give them to hurry up, finish a writing activity and get their summative grade. We want them thinking all along the way, working collaboratively, coming up with a creative writing that is organic and being shaped by the formative feedback that they're getting along the way. Again, for any of you who don't recognize those terms, formative, summative, we'll talk about that next week in much more detail. Pre-writing and planning stages, each of them quite supportive of higher order thinking, and really doing an entire lesson on pre-writing and planning before getting students to then go home or use another lesson to actually write are really good ways to make sure that that eventual product comes through a very purposeful process. And you see things you can do. Free writing, we mentioned, actually journaling is another good way. Categorizing, listing, mind mapping, of course, as you see here. Pros and cons listing, getting students to organize their thoughts so that they can then build upon them in their writing. Acrostic poetry, I like for young kids, actually, again, just to get them brainstorming. Acrostic poetry is when you give your students a word and you're using the letters as an acronym and coming up with adjectives or other words for each letter. You've probably done this with your students when they write their name and then they think of one adjective for each letter of their name. You can do this. That's a basic form of acrostic poetry and a nice activity for especially the very young ones. Considerations of the drafting phase. Now, I'm not going to get too deeply into this because it's certainly something we'll dive into with our high school groups later. But for the K-8 teachers, I especially want to focus on this part of the process, building from word to sentence to paragraph to extended writing by the time our students are at that B1 plus level at the end of middle school, going into 8th grade after 7th grade. One way you can do that, a fun activity, is dressing up a sentence. Now, you can come up with your own very basic sentences and then get your students to turn those simple, straightforward sentences into complex, creative sentences very systematically, categorically here, in fact. So this is a nice activity, again, because especially when we're with the young ones, obviously we're not writing extended essays, but we are teaching them how to write a full descriptive sentence, especially for creative writing tasks. This is a good way to get them to build up to that paragraph level. Just a quick suggestion for you. And interactive writing, what I promise to be the most fun aspect of writing, and which I would say I hope a lot of you will try out with your students in your classes, some of these activities. First of all, virtual museum tours and reviews. Now, if the pandemic gave us nothing else, it gave us literally hundreds of new ideas in terms of digital tools and tasks that we can do with students online. Many of you are probably saying we already did museum tours. Actually, I saw on social media many of our campuses doing museum tours, especially last year when we were still online. But I just have to show you this one. It's my absolute favorite. I'm guessing most of you know what the Met is, the Met Museum. Is that familiar? That's in New York City, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now I'm going to just get out of this because I feel like if I don't show you, you're less likely to follow up on it after the session. So just to hook you here, I'm going to show you this Met Kids site and hope that many of you will try it out with your own students. Now, you can see now, I suppose, Zainab, you can see my browser shared, I guess, Met Kids.
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you go to explore the map, now there's all kinds of things here. We talked about videos for input and some lessons that we can use. There's good videos on the site, but the best part is this map here. And it is massive. If you see here, you can scroll and there's just everything in the actual Met presented in kid-friendly ways. So each of the yellow and the red dots bring up different exhibits or different parts of the actual museum. And so I'm just showing you here, if I click on Great Hall, then there's an actual video. Most of them, there is a young student interviewing someone at the museum. So again, it's quite kid-friendly with students of their own age conducting the videos and these tours of the museum. And then there are short readings about the exhibits themselves. There are also some that have short quizzes and worksheets built in. Just a really great resource to use. And again, getting students to go off and do this on their own is great, or doing it in class with your students is a great exploratory interactive writing activity, especially when combined with reviews. So I like having students go through explore on their own and writing a museum review of certain exhibits that they see, exchanging those in class and getting their peer feedback on each other's museum reviews. So again, many ways you can do it, up to you how you might follow up on that, but I did want to recommend it. Now, a gallery walk, I'm sure some of you have heard of this before. Now, in some of our levels, you might have seen it before in lesson plans, but something I certainly want to recommend to you. Now, I can't explain every detail now, but you have a good link with a nice, concise explanation. However, you can do gallery walk in a number of ways. I like to do gallery walk where students exhibit some element of their work in the classroom, and then we have groups move around station to station and give written feedback to the actual person who created the work. And so if they do that, then the students will take their feedback based on their work in written form. They can then follow up and respond if you would like. There's a good handout that accompanies the activity here suggested on the website. So a gallery walk is a great way to do interactive writing and interactive lesson in a more general sense as well. The next one, Teens Advice Column. I know they love this in middle school especially, but the website I'm going to share with you on the blog is quite safe and student friendly. It is actually an advice column written for and by teens about issues they're dealing with in their daily life, but of course, staying away from some of those heavier topics about violence and sexuality, and just giving students kind of a more level appropriate opportunity to give each other advice based on particular circumstances they might encounter in their daily lives. Now, you can do this in your class as well. You can have students ask each other for advice and then assign advice columns to be written back and forth between students as well. Another nice way to do interactive writing in a way that will engage your students. Pen Pal and e-twinning. Now, I know a lot of you are doing e-twinning already. As I've learned on Twitter from a lot of campuses, some of the projects look great, really just exciting, motivating projects you're doing. I've asked before, I would love it if any of you at your schools are thinking about or already doing an e-twinning project, if you just share it with us at FLD@Bahçeşehir. It really is helpful for main office to be aware, because we can help give those ideas and present those opportunities to other campuses in our system. Plus, we can publicize the things you're doing and the great work your students are a part of. Now, on our blog, I'll be giving you a website for eTwinning. So if you don't know about it, you can go and learn more about it, as well as a Pen Pals site where your students can find opportunities for Pen Pals worldwide. And so both of those are really good ways to get your students doing interactive writing, not just with their peers here in the classroom in Turkey, in our Bahçeşehir schools, but also worldwide, where they can learn, obviously, as well about other students and their cultures. Now, other things we can do to fit in with this project scenario, task-based approach that we have in the Foreign Languages Department. Each of these are just meant to give you ideas of activities that have both spoken and written components so that you can have more ideas that you can do in your life skills lessons. Now, planning a vacation, making an itinerary for the vacation, presenting it to the rest of the class, getting interactive feedback about the vacation that they're planning, preparing a menu. Now, this is often a part of our lessons anyway, but specifically can be done in isolation, especially if it's integrated into some sort of a task. Like above, we looked at how-to videos. Those are quite nice for actually demonstrating recipes. The nightly news, conducting an interview, planning an event, even if the event does not occur, starting a company, which I think up in middle school and high school ages is an excellent entrepreneurship activity to do with your students. We talked about Convince Me If You Can, where students can create a commercial or an advertisement and invent a new product together. And finally, role-playing activities. And there are a lot of ways to do those as well. I'll be sharing one role-playing activity with you with role-play cards, just in case you're interested in learning more, or if you've never done a true role-play activity with your students, so you can get an opportunity to try it. Now, once again, I flew through it, not to keep you all longer than an hour, to give plenty of time for questions or comments, although we didn't have too many the last 2 weeks. But I'm still going to open up the floor because I'm curious if you have any questions as a follow-up to anything I've shown you here tonight. Please use the chat box if you do. Thomas, I'm just now, again, I can't see the chat box when I'm sharing full screen. So now I'm seeing Thomas says, kids love acrostics, yes. Ayub also said they surprised you with their acrostic poems. That's very nice. Any other comments, ideas? Now, please keep in mind, even if you have nothing to say now, you can at any time share your thoughts and your ideas and your feedback on the blogs. So if you see a post where you see an activity shared, you can always go there and you can write a post giving ideas, sharing your own resources. Really, one of the biggest goals of this Life Skills Initiatives is to generate more engagement academically among our teachers. So please get involved and take part. And we would love to see you using those blogs actively. And sure, Gülşen and Duygu, I see you all are thanking us. So no problem. Of course, that's what we're here for. Next week, now I probably won't be leaving you all early next week because it's the most packed session. Can't say it's the most fun, but again, it might be the most important. So please come back for assessment to wrap up next week, to get your certificates immediately after the session next week. And then I'll have great news because we, with the help of our BAU ELT partners at Bahçeşehir University, we're going to keep these Thursday nights going. We're going to have a whole series of upcoming trainings on a whole range of topics for you, including some of the top academics in the field, both at Bahçeşehir University and worldwide. Really excited to for what we have to offer you from Mentor Teacher Training Institute. I want to thank Dilek Hoca, Eda Hoca, and Zeynep, as always, for your support. For all of you on YouTube, thanks again. Signing out.
It was a pleasure for us, Mr. Benton. I really enjoyed a lot.
Sure, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Now, let's get to families and let's get to dinner times. And let's not hold our teachers any later. Have a nice Friday, everyone, tomorrow at your schools. And I look forward to seeing you all next Thursday.